Good afternoon. You're listening to WVBN, the world's choice for weekly news. Today, I bring you a special news story courtesy of naval captains around the world. As 1939 nears its end, one captain from each of the major naval powers volunteered to sit down and give their own perspective of the war. You'll hear from each captain about their own personal thoughts, the perspective of their home nation, and what they're hoping to achieve in the coming months. Our first guest hails from the land of the free, the world's foremost up-and-coming superpower, the United States of America. Captain Daniel sat down with us to elaborate on how a nation with two coasts has fared so far.
Hello all, my name's Daniel. The ice cream machine's still working on my battleship, surprisingly enough. I don't know how she does it. It's been interesting, to say the least. What to expect going in? I'd like to think we've done okay. The sinking of the Constitution was a bit of a gut punch. But overall, looking at our decisions in the past, I think at the end of the day we made the right calls. I am concerned about the attrition. So far, we've been lucky we've only lost a couple destroyers. Most of them have been on the older side. California and Maryland are probably looking at extended dry dock time, which is less than pleasant. The working with the other nations has been a very pleasant surprise. Keep racking up wins against the Morganas. Keep the rest of the world slightly less on fire. Aside from that, keep the Bells happy. Roll with the punches, that's all you can do. At the end of the day, as much as the USN likes to joke that we're playing a dating simulator while everyone else is playing a strategy game, actions have consequences. Sometimes you come up snake eyes. All you can do is roll with it and keep going forward.
Next, we'll hear from their cousins across the Atlantic, the United Kingdom. The top naval power on the globe, the Royal Navy has been involved in every theater of the war. Captain Wellington sat down with us to share how this traditionally maritime superpower has fared so far.
My name is Wellington. I am a British captain, technically Commodore. I'm also the primary diplomat for the Royal Navy captains. I would probably say I agree with the sentiment of some of the other captains that, relatively speaking, we are in the happy times and that things are just going to keep escalating and getting worse from this point onwards. I mean, we've already seen it with the unfortunate loss of USS Constitution and the Italians starting to get slapped around. Right now, aside from the starting winter war, I would say the biggest concern for me is the potential for the upcoming war in France, whenever that ends up happening. I'd say we've fared about as well as can be expected. The loss of Roanoke is, of course, a major heartache, but she became a belle prior to a loss, which means that we have the opportunity to recover her via her vestures, as we have been, and hopefully return her back to form. We've just managed to accomplish winning 3 heroic battles and victories, 2 joint operations amongst them, one with the Kriegsmarine and one with the US Navy and IJN. Now we're hopefully setting off to another joint op with the US Navy and the French over off of the Antilles. So that would make, hopefully, heroic battle or victory number 4. Definitely would argue with that and our other accomplishments through the past couple months that we're probably one of the top contenders for the nation with the best naval martial prowess against the Morganas. Obviously notwithstanding the fact that the Royal Navy is the top navy in the world. Of course, we also have decreasing Morgana defenses all across the world, but that's to be expected. Given the expanse of the Empire, it's unsurprising that we've got holes here and there, but need to sort out the North Sea defenses sooner rather than later if we can help it. All in all, going about it as well as could be expected. Personally, I would say that I'd like for us to continue working with the nations that we have been and continue to police the world's waters. We have the largest navy and the greatest ground to cover, so we pretty much have to act sort of as the world's police in this matter. Fleets all over the place, from the Caribbean to the Mediterranean to the Far East. The hopeful economic boom from focusing on the war economy and one of the previous war plans that went through should hopefully help in this regard. There is also the hope that we have the ability to provide protection fully for French Indochina, as well as if this eventual war in Europe with France and the Benelux does happen and the Benelux does fall, we would be able to also provide protection over the Dutch East Indies and eventually return the territory back at war's end. That we're able to continue to perform joint operations with the Americans, French, Italians, and the IJN.
Over in mainland Europe, the French Republic has seen their own navy put through many substantial trials. Nearly expansive as the British Empire, but with a far smaller navy, Captain Glatex sat down with us and gave her own perspective on how this storied nation has fared so far.
Hi, greetings everyone. I'm Glatux, one of the top French players in Victory Bell and one of the most prominent female lady member of the community. But if you want to be roleplay about it, you can refer to me as Capitaine Ambre de la Marine Nationale et de l'INPF. My general thought is a feeling of winning the battle but losing the war. Our fleets are having a lot of victories. Each victory gets us more and more tired, while the Morgana are seemingly infinite in number. While we get a victory somewhere, there is always a part of our countries and broader empires that are left behind. Unless we find a way to remedy that, I think attrition will get to us. That Germany should just surrender and make it easy for us. Mostly we are preparing the best we could to hopefully survive the onslaught and the initial attack. The ideal outcome would be the front to become a trench warfare. Generally in the Morgana War, I guess in a more broader way, we're kind of like Italy in a way, we're punching above our weight. In that we're not as big a fleet as the British or the American or the Japanese, but we do get some big victories here and all around, and while we are constantly winning, our fleet is not as expensive. We can't be everywhere at once, unlike the American or the British. Unlike Italy, we do have a larger empire. Smaller slice of our fleet globally affects us a lot more than it affects them. The empire is also way more concentrated. Outside of Ethiopia, they wouldn't have really to leave the Mediterranean much. As people sometimes forget, but the sun never sets on the French Republic. My hopes is that our most prominent boat started to get ready. Richelieu should be commissioned soon, and that there will be some breakthrough in the Morgana War, either technology or things like that. My personal hope is that France will get an option to raise false hope. After all, she did sink nearby Brest. Generally, we'll try to do our best, and I know not all German captains are bad, but it's not the German Navy we're worrying about. Many of us sometimes need to remember we're only captain.
Just across the border, the German Reich has had a troubled relationship with both other nations and with its own navy. After defeat by Britain in the Great War, few thought Germany would raise a surface fleet again, yet the Kriegsmarine has been in some of the most contentious actions so far. Captain Kotorito sat down with us to explain how Germany has fared so far.
I'm Kotorito, as said. I'm a captain of the Kriegsmarine, and I've been playing Victory Bells since launch. My favorite bells so far is Schleswig-Holstein, and I've also voiced Leveraged Mass in Nell's video about the server icon competition. You may occasionally see me in the server, although I mostly speak in the Kriegsmarine War Room. We have an interesting tradition. Every Thursday, we informally celebrate something called Seemannssondag. That's Sailor Sunday in English. Traditionally, the main deck is prepared so that everyone eats cake and drinks coffee together, no matter the rank. These past few months, the fight against the Nixon is a tough deal. We've come a long way. Therefore, I think we should keep up our endeavors on the waters. Although it's too early to tell, we don't plan to end up in last place. I think we've done well for ourselves and for humanity. The Kriegsmarine has prioritized engaging the Nixon. First and foremost, we have determined that they are the enemy. The news of the Royal Oak sinking has no doubt ruffled many feathers. Many of us were also shocked. It has come to our attention that German ordnance was found in her wreckage, but I would like to stress this tragedy is no doubt a Nixon ploy to incriminate us and sow doubt between nations. While we do want truth and justice, we have also heard rumors of Derflinger's involvement with apprehending Royal Oak's murderer. I hope that this can inspire the minds of many to lend a hand to others. We wish to act in good interest, but many of our actions are met with unjust scrutiny. We often have to worry about direct punishment from our nation's leaders, which can be severe. Some few unnamed officers were executed after they were deemed responsible for letting Orgel go unharmed. This is a tragedy to us. When we wanted nothing to do than help, I hope that the good deed will not go unnoticed. Let us remember them. We have also pledged and respected our support to the Soviets and their ambitions. We have no qualms with them as captains. They too have agreed that the Nixon are the true enemy, and we will jump at the opportunity to assist the Soviets against them. An example of this is with starvation. Even though he greatly upset the Fuhrer, Admiral Raeder executed plans that aligned with our wishes to focus on the threat of the Nixon. Should the government act upon him, we shall honor him as a martyr. One for the pride we feel as captains in our duty to the world at large. At every opportunity, we try and choose to walk the high road and support our international community, and I hope to keep this up, even against the wishes of our leaders. I hope that the other nations can recognize our efforts and see us as equals in the fight against the Nixon.
To the south, Italy has had perhaps the greatest number of peaks and valleys so far. With the most consistently powerful navy, Italy has won a number of prestigious battles, yet the limited size of the Regia Marina has proven to be an insurmountable obstacle for them. Captain Nimbus sat down with us to give his own perspective on how Italy has fared so far.
I'm Captain Nimbus. I was one of the Italian players on launch day, though I only started actually interacting with my fellow captains back on March 7th of 2023. I've kept up to date on the story, and I've been involved in our Italian metagame, and I'm actually our Italian diplomat to the Americans. So far, the Morgana threat seems manageable. We in Italy hope that humanity can unite against the Morganas. At the same time, we know that the conflict in Europe pretty much reached a boiling point. We're hoping to at least stay out of the war so that we can focus on the Morganas at sea and protecting maritime trade. It's definitely been rough. We're focusing on the Mediterranean and then the Red Sea. Those are our main areas that we're trying to protect. And it's been rough with our current fleet. We only have 2 battleships currently in commission. Though luckily both have manifested bells. We have another 2 that are being modernized, and we can't wait for them and the Littorios to come back into commission. But for now it's rough. We can only be in one place at a time. Our fleet's exhausted. We've had to be running back and forth to try and deal with problems, and then we have Vanity who's trying to deal with us, and we're having to keep her from killing us while we take care of our own interests abroad. Hopefully we can set up secure trade relations with other nations to get our critical materials. Steel and oil are our chief concerns so that we can keep our war machine afloat. In addition, Mogadishu we're hoping to turn into an international center of trade, and I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but we have some plans for Il Deuce once we get enough downtime to set them in motion.
The only non-Western naval power, Japan was seen by many as an unknown factor in the war. Engaged in a brutal war with the Chinese, the Imperial Japanese Navy has been pulled between 2 different obligations. Captain Hadebashi sat down with us to give insight into how their captains and this traditionally isolationist nation has fared so far.
My name is Hadebashi. Of course, I'm from the Empire of the Rising Sun. The Morgana's War have created a very, very huge crisis between the government and also the nation's security. Japan right now was on war with China. That had increased a very, very tension situation between the army and the navy. We're very unfortunate that our previous prime minister has resigned and that we are placed with a naval minister as our new prime minister of Mr. Yoi, increasing the home defense of our home island, New Tokyo, trading routes of the Korea and Japan, and also increasing the relationship and a much more better military conduct with the United States of America. The most very first priority is to stop the ongoing war with China. Right now, Morgana is totally not just as a threat between humanity, but also tries to create diversions between different nations. When you make enemies at the very first start, you actually would become friends by a circumstances of events that would change the whole history between a person or between a politic of different kind of nation. By taking the recent victory that we have did in the defense of the Formosa Island, along with the United States and the unexpected support from the British, we totally have made a really decisive victory. With fire, the destroyer Morgana has been between our Bowen Island and also in the South China Sea with a carrier delusional causing a traffic into the security of the sea. Japan not just needs to learn or even needs to rely on Western support, but we also need to stand by ourselves. The land and the empire of the rising sun shall not fall into the enemy hands whenever in any consequences.
Finally, the black sheep of Europe, the Soviet Union, has never been a contender for the world's best navy, but the war they've now found themselves in may demand that change. Navigating both internal and external politics, the Soviets have a long road ahead of them. Captain Waffle sat down with us to go over how the birthplace of communism has fared so far.
It is indeed I, Comrade Waffle. As you might expect, I'm captain with the Soviet team here in Victory Bells. First and foremost, I would like to point out that regardless of who these attackers would have been, they're enemies to the people and workers of the Soviet Union. And as a captain in the Red Navy, it is our responsibility to defend the people, all peoples, not just our own, against this evil force that would seek to oppress and kill them. The Soviet Union is not exactly renowned for naval strength, but we make do. I think it's a bit too early to really say for certain how we're doing. You could certainly say that of all of the various factions involved, we may be a bit more worse for wear than, say, the Italians. But we struggle on for the global revolution and the liberation of the working class. What I have jokingly called in the war room our 5-year plan has really just begun. Over the coming weeks and months, we intend to do several things. For one, we want to continue the unfortunate conflict in Finland to its conclusion so as to rid the Finnish government of any kind of Morgana influence. We would like to continue supporting our international and local allies in repelling the Morgana threat, while also ensuring that certain nations do not attempt to feign our goodwill for weakness. Part of our plan is to try and increase deterrence. However, longer term, we have several ships under construction in our near future, which I certainly hope we'll have the opportunity to get our hands on. These include the Chapayevs, more destroyers, and of course the crowning jewel of Soviet engineering, the Sovietsky Soyuz and her sisters. 65,000 tons of Soviet steel, truly a beast of the waves. Hopefully, if all goes well, we will continue to struggle onwards.
You've now heard from each of the 7 captains how their respective nations have fared. Some have won battles, others stuck with tough political situations. Each one had one thing in common: their desire to rid the Earth of Morganas. We'd like to thank each captain for their time and wish their respective nations well in the fight against the Morganas. That's all for now. Join us again at WVBN as we bring you the latest news from around the world. From all of us here at the studio, stay safe out there.